and regions have depth, it seems to me, insofar as they support art and artists. Montreal, for example, famously has Mordecai Richler. Toronto, of course, has Glenn Gould and many others. Northwestern Ontario has Norval Morrisseau. He was referred to at times with justice as the Picasso of the North. And this is what we're here today to celebrate. One of Morrisseau's earliest champions was Dr. Elizabeth McLuhan, who in the early 1970s studied his work as, for a thesis at the University of New Mexico. And also she curated one of the first exhibits devoted to his work called Norval Morrisseau and the Emergence of Image Makers, which showed at the AGO in Toronto, and for which she's best known for the book that came with that exhibit.
I was looking for a title that exemplified the essence of how Morrisseau seamlessly combines this traditional, the pictographic sources, and Western. From the beginning, he worked in both worlds. And the Shaman's Garden, of course, shaman and garden, Anishnaabe, Western concept, artificial nature garden. Because of the impact he has had, it's almost impossible to remember when there wasn't a Norval Morrisseau. In 1962, he had a landmark exhibit. It was the first commercial art gallery to have a solo exhibit for a Native artist. 1962 in Toronto at the Pollock Gallery. It was an overnight success. He sold out everything in the work, and he was declared a genius by the local papers in Toronto. Only 5 years later, Morrisseau, so 5 years after he has really launched his career, he had a solo exhibit in France. Among the 12,000 people who attended were Picasso and Chagall. Certainly, I think it's fair to say that when Morrisseau started his career as an artist, there were virtually no practicing contemporary artists of his caliber working who were Native. He had to sort of fit within the general expectations of what was expected of birch bark Indians. That's what they were known anthropologically, the Indians of the Great Lakes, the Native people. His art really is a product of the 50s and the 60s in a sense. So in order to be able to cultivate a market, viewers had to somehow be able to position his work within really limited context of what was the primitive, in a way. It was at that time this emergent Canadian identity. If you just take yourself back in time to Expo 67, if you remember the excitement there, I mean, this was sort of a watershed year really for Canada. A project on which also Norval worked in Montreal with a number of other artists. It was an incredible opportunity for the first time to bring together Aboriginal artists from across the country. This Anishnaabe artist from Northern Ontario always managed to both undermine and surprise public and popular notions of what was suitable. Even in 1984, the exhibit that Todd referred to, Norval Morrisseau, and the emergence of the image makers at the AIG, at the Art Gallery of Ontario, was reviewed with the headline, "Well, they're not making beaded moccasins." And I thought, good old Kate Kritzweiser. And that was a good review. She liked it. Contemporary Native artists were still expected to reference Western expectations. Morrisseau's art, then, is a visual synthesis, always, which saw its source as the oral traditions. And so his first concern were those stories that were looking like they were had become extinct as the storytellers themselves died off. His formative key influence was his grandfather, who raised him, who was a storyteller as well as a very important figure in his training. So there was always, with Norval's work in preserving culture, was a sense of urgency, which he was absolutely right. It was an urgent task to undertake. Morrisseau himself was an active student. He would go out and actually look for these, pictographic sites, not just from oral traditions, but also rock paintings and all of these. Again, this is an art form really, really rooted in so many organic ways in the landscape, in the place, and in the people who are here.